So I think we're going to do our own intros and then sort of jump right in. So I'm David Fry, the CEO of Paays. Paays is a monthly payment solutions provider for Canadian consumer travelers, and soon to be a provider of travel as a benefit with some HR benefit platforms.
Good morning, everyone. Anthony Rjeily, I'm a partner with EY. I'm responsible for our digital transformation and innovation practice in Canada, focused on the financial services industry mostly, and I also lead our open banking initiative in Canada.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lionel. I'm looking after digital at National Bank of Canada, and I work a lot with some of you. I see a few in the room to integrate mainly fintechs into our ecosystem. And I'm leading the open banking discussion for National Bank of Canada, so really happy to be here.
Thank you, gents. So let's sort of jump right into this topic. If you Google the term open banking, this is the nasty piece of work that comes up from Wikipedia. Open banking is a financial services term as part of financial technology that refers to the use of open APIs that enable and if you're a grammar teacher, excuse me for all this, the use of open APIs that enable third-party developers to build applications and services around the financial institution. Greater financial transparency options for account holders ranging from open data to private data, end of quote. Okay, so that's the Wikipedia definition. Anthony, maybe you can, and we can pull up a slide here for this. And this is Anthony's slide, so it's a good segue. How would you define open banking in Canada? So Canada, the state of things here, and then maybe contrast that with the state of open banking in other countries as well.
So for me, the definition of open banking, in addition to the one that you found online, is very simple. It's actually for consumers and businesses, so the customer, to give authorized access, to consent to give access to their financial data to third-party providers in order to get either enhanced or new products and services, right? And that could range from a multitude of either financial products and services or non-financial products and services that leverage some of their data in order to get access to that. So it's really more from a customer perspective and the benefits coming out from there. I think in Canada, to answer your question, is we're still very early in that life cycle, and I think we'll talk about that in more detail. We've done some research, and I'm happy to share some of the findings there, but we're finding that Canada actually lags significantly behind the other countries in terms of progress done to date, although we have a number of initiatives that have been done at the federal level to be able to help us do that. I think the good thing in Canada is that we have a very high level of innovation and investments that are happening, either in fintechs or just technology in general, which I think is going to be helping move the needle forward over the next couple of years in order to get to open banking.
Maybe Anthony, just quickly look, for people who can't see, the bottom left there is a ranking key among 10 countries, 1 being the highest, 10 being the lowest. So those that were thinking 10 was good, it's actually the opposite. So anything quickly on that you want to address?
Yeah, I mean, overall, Canada ranked, based on our research, what we did is we ranked each country across 4 dimensions. The first one is around regulatory environment, right? So where are we from a regulatory environment perspective? Are we moving ahead? And have we put in place some of the frameworks that are required? And Canada ranks dead last. From a consumer adoption, although we've seen some level of adoptions around fintech, and that's growing every year, more and more people are actually using other types of services around financials. We're still lagging the rest of the world's countries like the UK, countries like China, and so on and so forth. From a consumer sentiment perspective, so not just in terms of using the solutions, but how do people feel about open banking? I think there's a lot of questions, obviously we can talk about that in more detail, around privacy, right, around access to data. And I think the sentiment is fairly low here, so we're number 8 there. And then like I said earlier, I think we do okay from an innovation perspective. I think we're having a lot of investment and activity there, so we rank Canada in the middle of the pack. So overall, the aggregate ranking is 8 out of 10, which is not good if you look at it from that perspective, but again, there's a lot of things that we're hoping is going to happen over the next couple of years, which will move that, probably more upstream.
Thanks, Anthony. Lionel, so from National Bank's perspective, how would you describe open banking?
Well, I'm not going to do more definitions. I'm going to give you some quick examples. And for those who don't know National Bank of Canada, we are the sixth biggest bank in Canada, with the last of the big six. So for us, it's a great opportunity to change the game and to have a different value proposition. And if we put the consumer at the center and assume that consumers are ready to share the data securely, we can reinvent a couple of new paradigms. So I'm going to take one example that you must know. Thinking Capital is working with National Bank of Canada. And so it's an alternative lenders using data from the SME to provide loan. And for us, it's an opportunity as a bank because it's not clients we normally serve. So connecting with a partner, an alternative lender, based on sharing of data is a win-win for everyone. For the SME, you can get a loan. For the bank, you can have a new client and a referral, and potentially this company will grow. And from a fintech who is just making his business out of that. So if we take as a main driver the client adoption, and I think one of the key words is consumer adoption. All of these scales, consumer adoption is for me the most important one. If you fix something, it can work. And I give you another example, which is account aggregation on the retail side. Today, if you bank with National Bank of Canada, I'm not going to ask you who banks with National Bank of Canada, because usually I've got only one hand coming in. But it should be 2 and 3 and 4 tomorrow. You can aggregate all your transaction services within one single platform using account aggregation. So you can keep your credit card with RBC, you can keep your loan with my green colleagues, but you can still have one single entry to National Bank of Canada platform to manage your financials. And that serves a consumer need, which is where can I connect once and for all and understand my full financial picture. So open banking can help and serve client needs. Let's be sure that we do that securely and by listening to our clients.
Great. So let's talk about some opportunities. Anthony, can you take a look at and maybe speak to the opportunities for consumers in open banking, and maybe kind of in the context of that number 10 score, again, 10 being the lowest, for consumer adoption, and is this a chicken and egg thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think, from a consumer perspective, there's a number of benefits, right? I mean, if I, as a consumer, can have access to all of my financial information in one place, like Lionel said, and one entry point, and I can see a full view of my financial information, which today is really hard to do. There are some solutions in the market that provide that, but not really through what we call open banking as a framework. I think that's a good thing, right? Because it allows me to have a better picture of my financial life and to be able to take better decisions. The other thing is, from a consumer perspective, there's a number of different experiences, and I'll give you an example that open banking can help. So I'll take home ownership as an example, right? Today, if I want to go buy a home, I have to go through a number of different activities, all the way through, thinking about buying a home, seeing what I can afford, to shopping, to applying for a mortgage, and so on and so forth. And all of these activities are absolutely fragmented, right? There's no integration at all. And there's a possibility for me to be able to actually have an experience that's end-to-end, right? That actually walks me through and allows me to do that. When you look at it from an open banking perspective, right, the mortgage is actually at the center of that. And today we have to go and apply for a mortgage, as most of us, can't afford to go buy a home cash. So, but we're not in the market to buy a mortgage. We're in the market to buy a home and move our family in that house very, very quickly. And the ability to actually do that very seamlessly, including the mortgage application and all the financial information that's required, is a huge advantage. So, a financial institution like a bank, like a Banque Nationale, or another, provider in the market, has an amazing opportunity to actually be the platform of choice to be able to help a customer go through that whole experience. Well, that's a perfect example of open banking. And I think financial institutions have a choice of either playing a role of a platform, right? So taking all of the services that we're talking about in the value chain, integrating them, and providing them to a consumer, their consumer, and being the platform, or can continue being a participant in that ecosystem where someone else, an Amazon or someone else, can actually provide that platform, right? So to enable that, actually, it requires a lot of data aggregation, a lot of data integration, which is open banking, but at the end of the day, the consumer is a huge winner from that perspective, right? So that's just an example of how open banking can work.
Can I, as somebody who spent 18 years working at banks and in 3 different countries, one of the common things was silos and product silos. When I was at Money 2020 last year in Vegas, I think and Richard Branson was speaking there. It was a pretty incredible individual, but I think the main thing I left with was that financial services is going to be reimagined around the consumer. So that the consumer becomes the center of everything. And so if you think about that process, which is happening like very rapidly everywhere, and to some extent here, how do the institutions that have sort of spent decades building around product silos, right, that house data in different databases and have different languages even that those databases are coded into, how does that transition happen? Does it happen easily? Is it difficult? And maybe
You're going through that.
maybe that's a segue to Lionel.
Yeah, I would lie if I was saying it was easy. But I'm going to answer in two different topics. The first one is let's look at the vertical integrations. And the first thing I think as a bank we need to do is to be as open as possible to integrate part of the value chain propositions as easily as possible. So if I take the mortgage example, we took the choice with National Bank of Canada to connect with a fintech called Rjeily. You don't know Rjeily, but Rjeily, what do? They help you choose your house. So realtor.ca? Well, actually, you can now connect to bnc.ca and have a list of all the houses around your neighborhood, and then only you can apply for a loan. So the first complex things to do is on vertical, on the customer journey, being sure that you can integrate some components within your flow, but you don't own all the components, because it's not true that National Bank of Canada is going to become the listing of all the properties to be sold in Toronto Main Street. Someone else is doing that for us. So that's really important. The second aspect of your question is, and that's going to get more and more interesting, is how do we move from the financing to investment side of the house? How do we break the silos and being sure that when I give you a loan, as an example, I've got full visibility of the investments that you've got with all your different partners, your brokerage accounts, your savings accounts, and etc. And that's where it gets complex, because banking has been raised based on new products. And in the 80s, a new product means a new technology and a new silo with a new front end. So the biggest questions that we need to be answered to ask is, Lionel Pimpin on the investment side, is it still the same Lionel Pimpin on the mortgage side and on the direct account side? And answering that question is quite complex. National Bank of Canada did enter data transformation 3 years ago. We're in the middle of it. It's painful, but necessary, because we don't talk about it, but tomorrow the enhancements of all this open banking is going to be AI. AI, artificial intelligence, will plug into this data to create new value prop, and if you don't have clean data to access, it's going to be pretty tough to get the value out of these new technologies coming in.
So follow on to that, and sort of we've addressed the consumer a little bit, but think about the bank now. So what's open banking? What opportunities or benefits are going to be provided, or really the banks can sort of reach out and get through open banking? Sure.
So don't share it with anyone, but we've got a strategy on the commercial side. And the main thing is we very quickly realize we cannot do it all for all people. What we can do is being the platform of choice for clients, SME clients, to connect, and then use, for example, Intuit for their accounting, NetHR for their payroll. So how do we become a platform where our SME clients connect? And they will use our rails for payment, as an example, or loans, but they might use our partners' solutions to run their businesses. And that's why we created a contract with Intuit to be sure that we interconnect very quickly, and the link between banking and treasury and accounting is done as seamless as possible. So that's what's going to enable open banking, is the free flow of data back and forth. Because of course we can send data, but an accounting platform can send us back data as well. So that can be as interesting. You can hear me? Yeah, you can. But what is interesting is all that is linked to consumer adoption. I'm an SME client. do I really want my banker to know exactly what my accountant can see? Am I really to open the transparency about my cash flow? Or is it much easier to give him statements once a quarter or once a year? So all of that needs to be solved and to be sure that we've got consumer adoption.
Yeah, and I think to build upon that, some of the benefits that I see for banks are really threefold. The first one, as we talked about it, is you're going to have a much more holistic view of the customer. You're going to be able to see their full financial picture, so you're going to be able to offer more targeted, more relevant offers to them. So there's a revenue upside here that could be pretty significant for the bank. In terms of that, in terms of the role that the bank decides to play, either as a platform leader or participant or a utility provider on payment rails and whatnot, there's monetization opportunities there as well. The other thing that I see is that by having a full picture of your customer, you're actually going to be making much better underwriting decisions, for example. You're going to be able to assess the risk profile of your customer in a much, much better way, and obviously much more streamlined way. Right? And then lastly, as an industry, by being able to share data, you can actually create better fraud prevention as well. Right? So as you see transaction flow, as you see better information, open banking will also potentially have a better element of fraud prevention as well. So there's pretty significant opportunities for banks as well.
Okay, so the opposite of opportunity is threat. This is the MBA in me, which can't get rid of the word SWOT. So let's not use threat. Let's call it challenges or risks. So maybe Lionel, start from the banking perspective. Challenges or risks of open banking. And how about this? That you probably, as the 6th largest bank in Canada, may have a different perspective on the answer to this question, maybe than certainly 2 or 3 banks that we can think of.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, and why? Because we talk a lot between the banks about what it means and the challenges. And one thing we have all in common, and we need to share, and we need to protect, is the trust of our client. They used to bring piles of cash into big buildings. Tomorrow they give us a pile of data. And that security and confidence is something that I think all, and I believe, and all the banks needs to share, because once you break that, it's going to be very, very tough. So we are all, one of the key challenge is all around security and security protocols, to be sure that data is passed through securely. And more importantly is that it can be deleted securely as well, because that's something that the clients are expecting, and all that flow, and with that come the liability around that data needs to be structured and settled. So that's first challenge. I think that the second challenge is all around, and I think in my mind is the first one, is all around consumer education. If you look at what happened in the jurisdiction, and Anthony talked about it in the UK or in France, I've been talking about data protection for decades. Population is aware of what can be done, what cannot be done, and I embrace the recommendation that the Senate provided a couple of weeks ago, which is anything around education and PIPEDA and regulation around that to our clients is very, very important. One data point for you is, I think there was from another consulting firm in the US, they surveyed the US citizens, and I think they surveyed like 6,000 people, and they asked, so are you happy to share your data with anyone? The answer is no. Okay. How many of you are using Fintech for day-to-day? 40%. So it's like, I don't want to share my data, but I'm using these new value props. So there's a lot of education to be done. These goes together, guys. It's not one or the other. So the second challenge, I would say, for me, and I will let Anthony, because there are many others, so we can comment on, that's the second one, which is how do we educate more consumers to really understand what it means and the rights that they have.
Anthony?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, your last one is very important. What we're seeing is, the sentiment is low, but when the consumer or the customer understand that there's a value exchange and they're getting value by providing their data, then we see the sentiment actually jump, right? Because the first question you ask is, are you comfortable sharing your data? Of course I'm not, unless I understand how it's going to be shared, with who, and what are the protocols of control. I'm not actually comfortable, right? But once I understand those, and I understand that there's value exchange, then you see it. I mean, you think about all the data that's being exchanged on social media, right? Your life is out there. it's way more than, sometimes could be even more than financial information. You're already doing it because you're seeing a value change probably that is implicit, right, in you providing that personal data. So I think as that kind of evolves and as, more and more regulation happens around data privacy, I think we're going to see, probably that sentiment go up. But, the risks is around mostly data security and data protocols.
Okay, so we've got time for one more topic, and then we'll get to questions. Lionel, maybe look into your crystal ball and talk about open banking. Where are we going in Canada in the next couple of years, and maybe up to 5 years out?
I think we all could see that crystal ball. I do believe that from a regulatory standpoint, there has been a lot of consultation papers. The Senate looked at it, so there is some focus happening, and with that will drive quite a lot of activities. We saw that it happened in the UK, where there was clear timeline, clear deadlines, clear liability measures, clear technology path, and it accelerated the pace. My understanding is if consumers are pushing, and that's why consumer adoption is so important, if consumers see the benefits, it's going to accelerate. And for that, we're going to look at what happens in other jurisdictions. And today, unfortunately, in the UK, the results are not as expected. The main driver for open banking in the UK was increasing competition between all the banks. And it's the third time they go at it. They had to have the bank account portability. They spent billions of dollars to facilitate new entrants, and results are still to be proven. So maybe because a regulatory push is not the only way, it has to be an industry push, a consumer push, to be sure that we solve some specific problems for our clients. And if I take personally for National Bank of Canada, we embrace that. We are trying to create an open architecture as open as possible to integrate more and more data to serve our clients. So my crystal ball is simply get ready for it, because it's happening. I manage about account aggregation. I talked about alternative lenders like Thinking Cap. And whoever will be ready to benefit from it will have some advantages. And that's what we're trying to do.
So maybe one thing in there, if it's the consumer that needs to lead this, is there a specific consumer that leads that? There's a lot of research, obviously, around millennials and the trends that they're citing in many other industries. You think of Uber and the things that we give up as Gen Xers that we would probably never even thought that we would do in terms of security, privacy, data, and Facebook, I guess, might be the same analogy, that is sort of being led by millennials to drive that, and we're doing it, right? Is that the same in this case, or do you think it's a broader aggregate of consumers collectively?
No, it's very interesting. I think it will come from the Millennial Gen Z survey. If we look at what will be banking in 10 years from now, I don't believe people will see that what's the difference between a bank account or credit card or prepaid or whatever. It just give me something to manage my money. And differentiating value proposition between the banks is going to be complex if you are not something which is based on experience. If you cannot transfer money very easily or faster to different countries, to your friends, if you cannot, all these ads on will be the banking of tomorrow, because there's a big mix between why so many products just to manage my money. Not too many. So simplification of these products based on experience is gonna be for me a winning play. I don't have exactly know what it will be, but it won't be I'm gonna go and sell you another credit card, because it won't fly.
Really? But I wanted another credit card.
You got only 3 on your wallet.
Anthony, your crystal ball, what does it say?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be the eternal optimist here. I see it to be like it's stool that needs to kind of move together. There's the customer agenda, right, and the need for a customer to be able to do all the stuff that we just talked about. There's obviously the regulatory agenda, because you do have to have a regulatory framework to enable this and to make sure that you have the right controls and the right regulations in place. But a very, very important one is actually the industry, right? And I'm still hopeful that the industry is going to collaborate across the various industry segments to enable open banking, but that's still a very open question. In my conversation with clients, with some of the big banks, some of them are more proactive in trying to see how they open up their architecture in preparation for open banking. Others are very negative about it, right? They're trying to look even at ways to potentially delay it or stop it, right? So I'm hopeful that the industry will actually come together in a very collaborative way to do that, because that's the only way we win. There have been models, in the UK that have been very regulatory kind of driven, which there's a lot of questions about that. They're very costly, very slow. Adoption is not there. So I think in the next 18, 24 months is going to be very telling in Canada in terms of which models are we going to gravitate to. But I'm hopeful that there's going to be a balance of these two dynamics together.
Thank you. I think, Gary, do we have time for a couple of questions? Yeah? There are microphones, or should people just stand up and shout?
Shout.
Shout, okay.
You could give them one of those little guys.
Throw it. We need one of those cube things we could throw it into the crowd, right?
I could throw one of these.
Yeah.
Any tricky questions for our amazing panel?
I have two questions. I'm from the government of Canada. My job is open government, so I'm an ally in some ways. But I see the hurdles as well in trying to get data out there. First question is there not another driver for this which would be around transparency for citizens, not consumers, but for citizens? Would open banking enable greater transparency? And my second question is, short of actually agreeing to open banking, is there work that is being done to make sure that the data is shareable? That, the technicalities around how data sharing can happen, can they be worked on before everybody actually embraces it, so that you have all the standards and whatever it's thinking?
Yeah, so thanks a lot. That's very, very good questions. And for sure, I mentioned, because I only had little time, so I mentioned security and consumer confidence, but transparency was the third one. What is very, very important is being able to explain clearly to clients what is data being used for. And the Cambridge Analytica issue with Facebook is exactly what we don't want to do. Is using data without the client knowing that they're using it for. And it's very clear, and that's why it's very important that we explain very clearly to clients in the terms and conditions, as simply as possible, why, if they agree to share the data, it's going to be used for. And not like terms and conditions that when you sign for Apple Pay or Apple, you can sign and you give your life away. It needs to be very, very clear and transparent, so I'm a big believer in that, so thanks for that question. The second one, and Anthony referred it a bit around, is the technical standards. And the sooner as an industry we align around the technical standards, the better it's going to be for everyone. And being the smallest of the 6 banks, I'm pushing for quick and fast prerequisites, because I don't have the time to redo things 10 times. I don't have the money to do that 10 times. I don't have the resources to do that 10 times. So the sooner I take one standard, the better it is for everyone. No one is better. So at the moment, it's either UK standard or in the US standards or whatever. I don't really care. I do believe that all have pros and cons, but we need to set the directions very quickly. So that interoperability of our system with potentially a clearinghouse in the middle is going to be easier for everyone. So,
and on that point, I think it's important to say that for the banks it's important, right, because of the effort that's going to be required over their data. When you think about the third-party providers, Fintechs, some of the other providers that will need access to that, they don't want to deal with multiple data, protocols and data structures. They need to know that they can actually connect and get the data in one way and one way only, and that's going to require some standards around that stuff. And me as a consumer, if I know that there are data standards out there that they're being adhered to and whatnot, that gives me a lot more confidence. Therefore, sentiment goes up. Therefore, adoption goes up as well, right? So it's an important circle that data standards are very important within that framework.
Well, it's sort of witching hour, but if anybody has a burning question, we can put one in.
So when you look at that chart out there, beyond common standards, what else can Canada learn from other markets that are ahead of Canada in terms of adoption on open banking? What are 2 things that we observe from other countries that would help us accelerate here?
Can Can I quickly say, I think knowledge is power. And I think maybe the question around transparency might have been related to this as well, that in Australia, they're going even further than banking. They're into telecom and utility bills that are going to be accessible through APIs. This is really just the consumer kind of being protected in the sense of being knowledgeable of what they're actually paying for. So one, you can understand what you're paying. Two, that you may have access to other providers who may want to talk to you about better deals that you could get if you permission that.
Any final thoughts?
No, I just have two things to add, and that needs to be fixed very quickly. Number one is the liability framework. In case of something's going wrong, who is paying for what? And the second thing is around the who is going to settle and accreditate who can do what, kind of a clearinghouse. And it needs to be put in place because there is some due diligence. If data is floating around, there are some security protocols to be happening. There are some on the rail systems on credit cards, an example, you've got PCI compliances, that type of regulatory oversight is going to be required. And who is going to play that role is the second one.